are always pleased to highlight Rotarians in the spotlight. I was at the game on Sunday, the U of L women's basketball game, and looked up on the big board, and there was our Joyce Seymour. Joyce was honored by U of L at the game on Sunday for all that she's done for girls basketball in Kentucky, including using her own money to create what is now the Republic Bank Girls Invitational Tournament. Joyce's vision of what girls basketball could become has resulted in over 600 teams and 8,000 girls playing in the tournament. So congratulations to Joyce, who couldn't be here today. And then our Rotarian Riggs Lewis was chosen for the Bingham Fellows class of 2022, which will focus on the topic Downtown Moving Forward, Adapt and Reinvent. We look forward to hearing more about this down the road. So congratulations to Riggs. All right, now it's time for Cajun Culture class. This classical venue was first performed in the United States in New Orleans. Was it A, the ballet, B, the symphony, C, the opera? Who knows? Who thinks, well, yeah, you're cheating. You can't, the speaker, you know, so no. So who thinks it's the ballet? Who thinks it's the ballet? Okay, who thinks it's the symphony? And who thinks it's the opera? It's the opera, very good. Performed while New Orleans was still under Spanish rule at the Theatre Saint Pierre on St. Peter Street. It's opened in 1792. And now I'd like to invite Tom Crimmins, Club Director, Paul Harris Fellow, ×4 and member of the 1912 Society, to the stage to introduce today's speaker.
Hello, hello. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Uric Dufrene, Dr. Uric Dufrene. He is the Saunders Chair at the Business School at IU Southeast, and this endowed chair, his big responsibility is to do an annual outlook for Southern Indiana and Greater Louisville at the annual Economic Outlook Breakfast and Mid-Year Outlook programs. Sounds like a lot of talk, but this is probably the first place that I met Uric, and it really is one of the most comprehensive and interesting presentations of what's going on in the area in terms of the economy, employment, and so forth. So if you get a chance, it's open to the public, and please take advantage of the opportunity to do that. Uric obtained his bachelor's degree and MBA at Nichols State University, Thibodaux, Louisiana. By the way, some of the excitement around the Cajun culture question was that he's an authentic Cajun, so he was trying to educate me, good educator, okay? And I didn't know that it was the opera, okay? Uric got his PhD from the University of Mississippi, but he spent most of his career at IU Southeast. He started as an assistant professor of finance in the business school. He served as the dean of the business school and also served as executive vice chancellor for academic affairs. He teaches corporate finance at the School of Business and has been following the regional economy for over 20 years. He has lived in the area for almost 30 years. And when he's not teaching, he enjoys bicycle riding. In fact, last year in the Great Cycle Challenge, Riding to Fight Kids Cancer, all one phrase there, he was last year's top fundraiser for the Louisville metropolitan area. And when he's not doing that, he enjoys spending time with his 3 grandchildren. So please welcome Dr. Dufrene.
Let me set the timer here. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Tom, for the very nice introduction. Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Delene, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with all of you, to be here at the Rotary Club. And so I'm excited to be here. So we're going to talk about the economy. And, you know, if you watch the typical day on Bloomberg TV or CNBC, there's a lot of noise out there, right? So we're going to try to get away from the noise and sort of look at the big picture, maybe step a few thousand feet back, 35,000 feet view of the economy, and what we expect to occur this year and also beyond. Okay. And so let's get right to it. So Tom mentioned that I have been here for 30 years. And last week, actually, for the first time in 30 years, I lost my key. I lost my office key. So I had to go to campus police to, to request a new key. And I said, well, this is the first time I lost it in 30 years. So I had to go back a couple of days after to pick up the key. And the officer says, he says, okay, we'll see you in 30 more years. I said, yes, I hope so. So it was, but that was the first time. But anyway, when you mentioned the 30 years, I thought of the key. All right. So the three big things I want to talk about today: the state of the labor markets, state of manufacturing. Manufacturing, of course, even though we have fewer people employed in manufacturing in Louisville Metro, it still is a very important sector to Kentucky, Louisville, and also Indiana. And we'll also talk about the consumer. So the consumer, as you know, makes up almost 70%, 69.8% of the US economy. So what happens with all of us, what happens to the consumer impacts the overall economy as well. And then after that, after we get through the labor markets and manufacturing and the consumer, we'll sort of talk about the overall outlook, what I expect to happen over this year, and also some trends beyond this year, okay? In other words, what are some trends that might be with us after we're past COVID and the pandemic? All right, so let's talk about some labor markets here. All right, so the big challenge right now, the big issue for the labor, and I'll explain. This is actually it's a very nice graph, but I'll talk about the graph. So the big challenge right now with respect to labor markets is labor, the availability of labor, right? So the labor force nationwide is down about 2.5 million, 2.5 million workers from just prior to the pandemic, February of 2020. Okay, so we're down about 2.5 million workers. And the labor force participation, that's also down. So February 2020, we were about 63 something percent. Right now, we've been stuck in the 61% range. The past couple, 3 months, it's been going up just a bit, and that's a good sign. And I think that's some early clues as to what will happen this year with labor force participation. But if you look at this graph here, this tells us that, you've heard a lot about the 55 plus group, right? And the 25 to 54 group, that's what's called the prime age workers. And you see here that the prime age workers, the largest decline in the labor force is with our prime age workers. Now, I kind of take offense to that, offense to calling the prime age workers. I'm in the 55 plus group. And so what does that mean? Am I subprime or choice, right? Maybe use the term primus or something like that. But so 25 to 54 is your prime age workers. And you can see that's the largest drop. Okay, on a percentage basis, it's actually the 55 plus. But we've had declines in all three age demographics. But I do expect that this year, and I have a graph that I'll share with you shortly, why I believe this will begin to turn up. If you look at labor force attainment, so labor force participation by education attainment, you can see here that we're actually up. Labor force participation is actually up college level and higher. Okay. Now, this has a lot to do, I think, with the flexibility and remote work that some workers have been able to enjoy and take advantage of, right? If you look at the lower scale, you see the largest declines in lower scale. Now, this is having an impact on wages. If you look at wages, I don't have a graph on that, but if you look at average weekly wages, it's actually going up less than high school and high school on a percentage basis, more so than the college level. And that's simply because of the lack of available labor for certain positions. Okay. All right. So this graph is quite telling because it says that we have about 3 million prime age workers. So we talked about the largest fall in the labor force was for prime age workers, okay, over 1 million. There are 3 million prime age workers not in the labor force, but want a job now. And of that 3 million, about 2.5. So you can see the gold line, 1.4 million did not search last year. 1.1 million searched for work. And then you have a combination of all these others. They're not in the labor force now because of family reasons, because of health reasons. They're in school or they're just not available. At some point this year, I do believe that this number is going, well, it's going to decline some more. And you'll see these 3 million prime age workers who are not in the labor force right now. They're not being measured as part of the labor force. They will come back to the labor force gradually. Now, of course, a lot of that has to do with the virus and Omicron, right? And we see that at least the evidence indicates now that although the spread is a lot more contagious, right? It's not as severe as the Delta and the variant prior to Delta. But I do expect some of these workers to come back to the labor force. So job openings, you've heard a lot about job openings, right? Lots of job openings, lots of quits. We have the highest level of quits ever in the history of the series. That's not a bad sign. That means that workers are very optimistic, right? But the quits tell us about, the quits, and this is not the quits graph here, but the quits, that tells us that workers are very optimistic, but also the work environment is changing. And that's where it's very important that employers think about that, right? And that is going to have an impact on the ability of employers to recruit and also retain employees. But if you look at that blue line, that's openings. So lots of openings. It's actually higher than the number of unemployed right now. That's the red line. Okay, so we have more openings. This is nationwide, more openings than the number of unemployed. Now, I say this, that we have the highest level of openings. We have a lower participation rate. We have a smaller labor force, but GDP is higher. GDP has expanded, right, compared to pre-pandemic. In fact, a report came out today, the last quarter of 2021, and GDP expanded close to 7%, 6.9%, was supposed to be about 5.5%. So we have a small labor force, but GDP is expanding. Why? Well, because of productivity changes. We have seen an increase in productivity nationwide. It's kind of fallen off just a bit with Omicron. But if you look what's happening here, now these are investments that are happening now, that's happened over the past year and a half, that I think will have implications moving forward beyond COVID. And that is, look at the investment in software, investment in information processing equipment and software, right? Now, you can see it's been going up, right? But you can see the acceleration the past year and a half, the acceleration in software, the acceleration in information processing equipment. You also see this here. Look at the increase in industrial machinery, right? Numbers that we've never seen before. Look at the increase in non-defense capital goods, excluding aircraft. So what's happening? Employers are responding in ways to meet demand. And the labor shortages that we're seeing, it's very difficult to hire right now. Employers are making investments to ensure that they'll be able to meet demand moving forward, as they have in the past 2 years. So this is going to play out after COVID in terms of the productivity changes. I think we'll see, and some other things that I'll talk about shortly. Okay, so look at Louisville here. Now this is a messy graph. There are 3 lines. One is the labor force. That's the blue line. So that's the number of employed and unemployed. You have the red line, which is the number of employed. And there you see the yellow line. That's the number of unemployed. Okay. Now what's happening here is we've basically run out of workers or available workers, right? That's why you see way on the end over there. Notice how that red line is getting very close to the blue line, which means that we've used up the available labor force, right? So that's why you see unemployment very low. I think right now the unemployment rate for Louisville Metro is 3.65%. which is very low. Southern Indiana, it's 1.8%. A report came out this week that the state of Kentucky and Indiana are now seeing the lowest unemployment rates in the history of the series. Okay, so that's why you see all this happening right here, right? And what's happening is we're finding ways to produce. Again, automation has been around. COVID has accelerated some of that in terms of the use of capital over labor. Okay, all right. So what are some key takeaways? And then we'll talk about manufacturing and then the consumer. One is the nationwide labor shortage is having an impact on job growth. One of the reasons why nationally we saw some declines in the month-to-month job gains is because we simply don't have the available labor force. Productivity increases. So you're going to see that with the software investments, machinery investments. All these investments you're seeing now will have an impact on productivity, allowing employers to meet demand, to produce more, in some cases with fewer employees. So that's a big question, capital versus labor, right? And, you know, this last bullet point, when I talk about changing dynamics in the labor and the, yes, in the labor market due to remote work arrangements, this might be with us for quite some time, right? I know you have employers that are trying to get people back to the office, but I don't think this is going to go away. And the ability of employers to navigate that and do it in such a way that they can recruit and retain employees, I think will be critical for employers. Okay, let's move on to the, because I've got about 7 minutes. So let's move on to manufacturing here. And I talk about some of these takeaways in the overall conclusion, okay? So manufacturing. All right, so what's happening with manufacturing right now? The last time we saw this, this is inventory to sales ratio. So think about the shelves, right? Shelving, right? Being empty or being full. So a very low number like this suggests that the shelves are bare. And we have what's called the restocking phase, right? The last time we saw this restocking phase was way back over here. Let me see if this works here. Yeah, right there, right? 2012. That was coming out of the Great Recession, right? Louisville, well, nationwide, we had very low inventory to sales ratio. That resulted in the biggest increase on a percentage basis in manufacturing employment for Louisville Metro. We had a big increase in manufacturing employment. And I think we're going to see that again. Again, the challenge is available workers, right? That's the challenge. But this overall is a very favorable indicator for manufacturing in general. It's going to take some time to restock the shelves. New orders keep rolling in. You can see here, right? Very high orders. You know, they haven't really stopped. And okay, so this is plant capacity. This blue line is plant capacity. The red line is goods spending on goods, not services. You can see here what happened, right? We've had the biggest run up, the biggest increase in goods spending ever in the history of the series, perhaps in the history of the country. At the same time, we had a big drop in plant capacity, right? Plants had to shut down, but orders kept coming in, right? And so this really, some of the origins of the supply chain challenges, right? You know, the supply chain didn't break down. The supply chain was simply overloaded. As I used with an example one time, if you have a truck, right, and you can fit 100 boxes on the truck, but you have orders, you only have one truck, but you have orders of 1,000 boxes, then you know 900 boxes have to be left behind, right? And that's in essence what's happened with the supply chain. But here's what's happening. So this truck driver postings, look at that. Now, before the pandemic, truck drivers were in great demand. All right, I mean, we had a truck driver shortage before the pandemic. So what happened? Truck driver postings went from about 127,000 to about 270,000. Right. So now you can't just put somebody in a truck and say, go drive, right? It takes time, you know, to train and to get ready for that. So this is really the origins of the supply chain crisis. We had a big increase. Again, this red over here, look at that. Like we've never seen before. Now here's what's going to happen. Spending on the red line, the goods, that will come down. That cannot remain sustained. Okay, let's see. I said it 5 minutes earlier, so that means I've got 5 minutes to go. So, all right. So, All right, so key takeaway. I think this year we can expect some solid growth in manufacturing because the shelves are empty, and well, you can look in the store sometimes and they really are empty, right? So the shelves are empty, which means we have to do some restocking. And now here's the key though, on the second bullet point, manufacturing growth does not always transfer to growth in manufacturing jobs. That is, think about the investments in machinery and software that's happening right now, right? If you look at the state of Kentucky, for example, right, you see that manufacturing output, right, is much, much higher now. I have a graph that I share with that sometimes, significantly higher than what it was, say, 20 years ago. But employment is considerably lower, right, in manufacturing. So this doesn't always mean that we'll have an expansion in manufacturing jobs. I think we'll see an increase, but not as much perhaps in the past relative to the amount of growth because of these gains to productivity. And again, that's the key, is will labor constraints accelerate the use of more capital, more automation in order to produce or to meet demand? Okay, let's talk about the consumer now, because the consumer is going to have a very big part in deciding, right, what happens to the overall economic outlook for the coming year. And one is household net worth. Now, look at this. Now, this is so this is household net worth, and look at the Great Recession. You see that we had a big drop in the household net worth in the Great Recession, and it took about 4 years, I think, right? So we had a big drop in housing values. You had the stock market down. It took about 4 years to make that up, right? And that was a financial crisis. Balance sheets were sort of destroyed, I guess, household balance sheets. You had a lot of debt, personal debt. But look at here. So we saw a drop here. We saw a drop at the start of the pandemic or the COVID recession because of the 35% drop in the stock market, and you had some softening in housing prices. But look what's happened since then, right? Not only are we at the highest level, but it's the highest, well, I think the fastest acceleration that we've ever seen in household net worth. So the household is very strong right now. Look at household debt as a percentage of personal income. That's been dropping since the Great Recession, and it dropped during the pandemic. It's kind of come up a little bit, right? That's kind of a good sign. But again, that continues to drop. You look at delinquency rates. This is for consumer loans, commercial and industrial loans, and consumer loans, credit cards. That's been plummeting during we had the deepest recession, but we have a reduction in late payments, right? And then you see home equity loans, right? So the blue line is home equity. Notice the big drop in home equity loans. Well, what's been happening to housing prices? If you look for a house lately, they've been going up. So we have more equity that households have not tapped into yet, okay? And all this is going to be important, I think, it's unused kindling and available to support future spending. And then retail sales. This is another one. Again, there's a lot of noise out there, and you hear last month there was a decline of 1.9%. Yes, there will be a decline. You cannot continue sustaining that level of spending unless you see a significant increase in income, right? So you're going to see some normalization of this. It doesn't mean that retail sales are going to just collapse, right? But you will see sort of a return to normalization, I guess. All right. Personal spending. So this is a graph here that sort of shows what the origin of the supply chain crisis here. See that big increase in spending? This is services spending. This year, we should probably expect services spending to increase as the economy continues to reopen, and the goods spending. You can only use so many refrigerators, right? So many couches. This would probably come down. All right. So some key takeaways. Consumers have more money to spend. Savings rates have come down, still relatively elevated. Some of these current supply chain issues that we're seeing now will provide a boost to subsequent demand. What do I mean by that? If you want to buy a new car now, you can't. You have to wait several months, right? And then you might be paying above the asking price. This is going to result in some consumers delaying some of these decisions after the supply chain issues have been resolved. Long term, though, however, we're going to see, I think, again, this is well after COVID, but more cautious consumers, right? So more frugality. households watching their money a little closer, right? Because they don't want to be caught like they were caught a couple of years ago in the COVID pandemic. So I think you'll see some elevated savings rates as well as this overall consumer caution. All right, so that's about it. Overall, though, I am very optimistic for this year. Optimistic for Louisville. My outlook last year was that we would fully recover all jobs by the end of the year, and we're close to that, about 15,000 to go. But I do think by the time this year rolls around, by mid-year, we should make that up. Okay, so all right, that's all. It's been great spending some time with you, and I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you. Okay.
Questions,
do we have a skilled trades problem? I mean, here we do. It's been 5 years since I was a business owner, and I know mechanics. I got 90+% of my mechanics in Indiana. I never got them here in Jefferson County, primarily because schools teach trades in Indiana. They really don't teach them here in Kentucky. We talk about education a lot here in Rotary. What can we do to inspire Kentucky to be a little bit more proactive in the education and trade?
Yeah, there's well, not just at the skilled trades level overall. There is, this was an issue that we talked about before the pandemic, right? Cities across the metro areas, Louisville included. Is it on? Oh, this one. I'm sorry. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. Oops, that's my fault. Yeah. So the yes, there is now. I have a graph that I share with groups sometimes, and it shows employment by education attainment. And it's rather striking, actually, because since the year 2000, you see a relatively flat line for workers with a high school diploma. Actually, it's lower now than it was compared to 2000. Okay, you see the only line really increasing is at the baccalaureate level and higher. And then you see some college and associate degree going up somewhat, but not at the same rate at the baccalaureate level. So, it is, I think as regions, we have to look at all three, right? You've got to look at the high school, skilled trades, as well as overall education attainment. I've said this for years, that our biggest challenge as a region overall is education attainment. We've got to get those attainment rates up, but that includes skilled trades as well. So, and I'm a first generation college student, so I like to share that. And so of course, I know the value of education because it's done a lot for me. But overall, I think we've got to look at all levels of education. That's critical, especially at the baccalaureate degree and higher.
Quick, Elgin. We've seen in the past year or so things like cars couldn't be sold because you can't get the chips for them. The chips are made in another country. And that's just one example. Do you foresee more manufacturing of critical components coming back to the United States?
Yes, that is happening. That will happen. It is happening, right? So there is a plant that's going in outside of Columbus, Ohio, building chips, manufacturing chips. And you will see manufacturers trying to move some of the production closer to the customers, right? So that is happening, and you'll continue to see some of that. And this is how that will also, and from a cost standpoint, how that will be successful. And that is all these investments we're seeing in software and machinery, right? In order for plants to locate here, manufacturing, they'll have to have very high rates of productivity, right? Which is going back to the skilled trades question. I think after COVID, you're going to see a greater polarization of skill versus unskilled, right? Because when you're making those kinds of investments in software and machinery, you need someone to operate that, right? With the kinds of skills that are necessary to operate high level equipment and so forth. So yes, so you will see, again, it's happening right now, and you'll see more of that.
Last question.
This is from our Zoom attendees. What impact will an international crisis, i.e. Ukraine, have in the local and national economy, both short and long term?
Well, that's that's a good question. If for example, if you see the price of oil continue to go up, if this drives oil prices higher, then that could have an impact on consumers, right, at the pump and the cost of living. But I don't see that in terms of the local economy having a significant impact on the local economy, right? Now, we are linked to the national economy, right? But we have, you have seen in the past, there are these geopolitical crises that occur throughout time and from year to year, and we're able to get past some of these. So I wanted to just mention one more thing. Actually, I forgot to mention this, but about employer relationships. If you're interested, IU Southeast is holding a breakfast, Employer Connect breakfast, which will give employers an opportunity to learn more about how universities can partner with employers, which is, I think, one of the keys in general. Education institutions have to partner with the business community, with employers, right? Who are our customers? Our customers are all of you, the employer community. And so that's critical. And so there was a breakfast February the 22nd, I think. I've got some cards at my table. If you're interested, I can get you more information. So.
All right, thank you very much again, Dr. Dufrene.
Okay, thank you.
Come back for our Mardi Gras party. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Rotarians. And now at this time, I would like to have Past President Luke Schmidt, Chair of the Community Impact Committee, to the podium for a special update from our Community Impact Committee. And be sure and have your questions ready. We're going to have like a soft end today. So if you have to leave at 1, we understand, but please, if you have time and can stay around and chat and ask questions after this, we'd appreciate it. So thank you, Luke.
Thank you, President Jean. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Community Impact Committee, or CIC. It's a large committee with over 50 members. And before I get into this, if you're a member of the CIC, would you mind standing? Because I'd like for everybody to see who all is on this committee. And thank you for your work and time. This committee is a busy committee, and you'll see here in a few minutes, we've invested hundreds of hours in the project that we're going to unveil. So if we could have the first slide, please. And to kick this off, let me just ask a question for everybody here. Are you ready to join your fellow Rotarians and help change some lives in West Louisville by supporting a new transformational project that's going to impact generations to come? And it's going to be the first of its kind project in the entire United States. If you're ready to join us, raise your hand, and I hope I see every hand. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. Last week, Denise Sears, who chairs our Policies and Justice Subcommittee, did a great job of teeing up one of the problems and issues that we identified here in the community. And that challenge is simply put, it's growing home ownership through access to affordable capital. And as Denise pointed out, even though redlining technically doesn't exist anymore, the impact of redlining still exists. 80% of the residents living in West Louisville are renters. Conventional banks, as she pointed out, are encumbered by federal regulations that in many cases prohibit loans in the West Louisville area. A lot of the residents that live there don't qualify for a conventional bank mortgage due to their credit score. And as such, opportunities to build wealth are very, very limited. But what we found out in all of our research is that residents that live there that are renting are often making monthly payments on time at a rental rate that's 2 to sometimes 3 times what a bank mortgage loan payment monthly would be. So the question we asked of our committee and the experts we talked with is, how can we fix this? And so broadly speaking, again, the issue is housing, specifically is improving the access to capital. Next slide, please. So the solution, as we worked on this, we set two goals. First, we wanted to do what we could to improve homeownership opportunities in West Louisville. And second, to do that, we want to establish a pool of funds that can be used to provide affordable home loans. Now, you're going to hear this word many times. This is a transformative initiative. It's the first of its kind in the United States. We've looked around and experts in this field tell us nobody has seen what we're going to propose anywhere in the country. So the Rotary Club of Louisville is leading on this. Our target market is, and our goal is to raise a minimum of $5 million over 5 years. That's a heavy lift, but we think we can do it. Our target market are first-time low and moderate income home buyers living in low and moderate income census tracts in West Louisville. So next slide, please. So now you're wondering, how will this work? Okay, basically 4 steps. First, the Rotary Club of Louisville will raise funds to underwrite this program through the Rotary Fund of Louisville. And that is, of course, for tax purposes. For people that participate with this, they can get the full tax deduction. And again, our goal is to raise $5 million. Next slide, please. Point number 2, through a gift agreement, all of the funds that we raise will be transferred to our fiduciary partner into a dedicated account for this project. Now, you're going to hear more about the fiduciary partner in just a second. Next slide, please. Third, our fiduciary partner will administer this program. They will be responsible for originating and servicing loans to first-time home buyers in West Louisville. Now, we learned and we realized very early in this project that one of the things we did not want to do was create the Bank of Rotary. That is not our purpose. None of us, well, some of us are bankers and have banking backgrounds. A lot of us, like me, don't. And the worst thing we could do is try to take on that role. So we really do need the expertise of a fiduciary partner. Next slide, please. Our fourth point is the way this will work. As the pool of funds grows, we will make transfers to the fiduciary partner and establish that dedicated account. And then buyers who live in West Louisville who qualify will be able to qualify for a full loan. Now, this is not down payment assistance. This is not rehabbing a house. This is the full loan that otherwise they can't qualify for. And we'll show you how that's going to work in just a minute. But the neat thing about this is as buyers come into the program, as they make monthly payments back to service their loan, those payments go back into our dedicated account. And because of that, this becomes a revolving fund over the years. And as funds are paid back in, more loans can be extended. And really, this thing has an infinite lifetime because of the way that we're setting it all up. So this is going to sustain itself for years to come. Next slide, please. So who's going to benefit from this program? Well, first of all, first-time home buyers. Our fiduciary partner is in a position, and they're going to provide innovative financing for 30-year loans. The program is designed to be flexible with a specific goal of increasing and improving homeownership opportunities in West Louisville. Generational wealth building will begin. You might remember the quote that Denise brought here last week from Yvette Gentry about having the African-American grandfather, the white grandfather, both fought in World War II, both survived, both came home. The white grandfather qualified for the VA and a lot of different programs and died a property owner. The African-American homeowner did not, simply because of his race, qualify for any of that, and he died a property renter. So the neat thing about this, as we go forward, health outcomes, educational attainment, public safety, neighborhood pride is going to increase, all because a lot of people are going to be able to buy a home for the first time. Donors will benefit from this. Loans are going to be made in low and moderate income census tract in West Louisville to those buyers. Banks that participate in this program will qualify for the Community Reinvestment Act, or the CRA. That's another thing we learned early on. It's really important. And individual donors or businesses that participate will also qualify for the tax deduction. And again, this is the first of its type program, according to the Federal Reserve. And we have some eyes on it already. We've already been asked in our limited amount of time When can we bring this to Eastern Kentucky? And we have a Rotary Club in Oakland, California that's following this very, very closely. Next slide, please. Okay, how does this program differ from others? And there are a lot of good programs in Louisville. We're not here to say that this is the end all be all. It's not, but ours is turnkey. Unlike other programs that provide funding for down payments, rehab expenses, closing costs, and so forth, this one's going to provide the capital for the full 30-year mortgage. This program is not subject to federal regulations that prohibit traditional banks like PNC or Fifth Third or West Banco from making conventional loans in this space. And it's going to place borrowers and families who have the means to make the payments, but otherwise can't qualify for a conventional bank mortgage into their first home in the 9 traditional West Louisville neighborhoods. And our estimate is if we're successful in raising the $5 million, we can put maybe 63 families in their home for the first time. Next slide, please. Let's talk about our fiduciary partner, and we've got a good one, Park Community Credit Union. Now, when we started this, we knew we needed to find somebody, so we had a committee that helped us draw up some guidelines. We identified 4 entities in the community that one way or the other we thought could help us here. Denise and I met individually with each of the 4, and then from that, we issued an RFP. So 3 of the 4 responded, and when it was all said and done, Park Community Credit Union rose to the top without question. If you don't know much about them, David Constantino, who is their senior VP, is with us today. They've been around 56 years. They're well capitalized with over $1 billion. They are designated both a community development credit union and a community development financial institution, or CDFI, which is really important. Lots of experience in the low income space. And here's something they did, which we didn't ask them to do, but they did it anyway. In their proposal, they said that they would match by 20% all of the funds we raised to a cap of $3 million. So David, thank you very much for that. It's very generous. Park's very familiar with West Louisville. They have 7,000 members that live there, and they have a lot of strong partnerships with African-American churches. Next slide, please. So another little bit more about Park. They will bring flexibility to this process, and they've agreed to explore additional underwriting criteria that's not currently available. They suggested to us early on that we set aside about $250,000 to cover closing costs, which we will do that, and that will eliminate additional barriers to homeownership. They will commit resources for marketing and promotion to go out and find buyers to participate in this program. And because of their designation, any bank that participates as a donor will get their CRA credit. Again, very, very important. Park is not going to charge us any administrative fee. Their sole source of compensation will be from the interest earned on the loans. And all of this has been memorialized with a fully executed gift agreement between the Rotary Club and Park. So again, David, we appreciate all of your support for this. Next slide. Let's talk about vetting. And you're probably thinking, my God, this committee's gone wild. We really haven't. We started working on this concept. We actually started running it through the board back when Julie Schmidt was president, and it's carried forward to Gene West Osavio's presidency. And we also put a steering committee together, in addition to myself and Denise, Lori Flannery, who's also our current Rotary secretary and the director of New Directions, and also an attorney. Lori provided us with a lot of good legal help, and Lori, we appreciate that. Thank you. Adam Hall with Fifth Third Bank, who is their VP of Community Development, has been absolutely instrumental in helping us work through the concept. And he's not here today, but I know Kimberly is here. And Kimberly, he has helped us immeasurably, and thank you for that. We appreciate it. Tara Lavelle, the Black Community Development Corporation of Kentucky CEO, Faith Weekly from the Federal Reserve Louisville branch, also on board. We also have met with community leaders to share with them what we've been working on. Denise and I have met with Mayor Fisher. He's fired up about this, very supportive. We've had 2 meetings with Metro Council President David James, also very supportive, and Nikki Lanier back when she was president of the local Federal Reserve bank as well. We still want to reach out to the 5 Metro Council members who serve parts of West Louisville in order to bring them all on board. I will tell you, we've met with a lot of people. And once people understand what we're doing, the response has been absolutely overwhelming. Not one negative response or anybody saying, "Are you guys crazy? Have you lost your minds?" That's not happened. Next slide, please. So our part of this, think of Rotary as, in this case, as a facilitator. Our job is to go out and raise $5 million. And we're quite confident that we're going to be able to do that. It'll take a while. It's not going to happen today, but we think we can. Nationwide, banks, businesses, and a lot of foundations have made huge commitments to the issues related to DEI and, trying to fix some of the problems that are here. And remember how we got here. We got here locally as a result of the Breonna Taylor shooting, as tragic as that was, followed by the civil unrest. And it woke up a lot of people, me included, to understand that not everybody in our community has the opportunities that many of us in this room have. And that's really where we're coming from. So what we want to do is we're going to be approaching banks. We've started a quiet phase of the fundraising campaign. We've already met with 3 or 4 banks, several businesses, large businesses, not one turned down. Everybody is doing their due diligence. But there's a role here for individual donors as well. And so pledges that are made can be paid in full or spread over 5 years. All participating folks will be recognized. Next slide, please. So you're thinking, uh-oh, here it comes, the ask. And yes, we want to ask all of our Rotarians to seriously consider participating in this because we think it's important. What we settled on was asking each Rotarian to consider a pledge of $500 a year for each of 5 years, or $2,500 in total. If we can get on an average for all of the club members that we have to do that, we can raise as individuals around $900,000, which is no small amount. And that goes towards the amount we're going to be approaching the banking community for, the business community, and so forth. Larger contributions are welcome. I can tell you that right now. This amount is consistent with the amount that club members were asked to think about 10 years ago when we did the college scholarship program. And many of you all participated in that. And that was a huge success. This represents the biggest project this club has ever undertaken in terms of the money part and the impact. And, this club has a long history of stepping up. And right now, Louisville is, I think almost everybody in this room would agree, Louisville is not in the position any of us would like to see it. Our growth lags other cities. We have serious problems in parts of town that a lot of us weren't aware of until the last year or so. So we've got a great opportunity here. I hope everybody here will participate at some level. So President Jean, if we have time for questions, we're happy to do that. But that's where we are. It's an exciting program, and I hope everybody here will participate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luke and Denise and the committee. They worked tirelessly for hours, days, and months. Oh, thank you. Dr. Dufrene, this is yours, right? Can you hear me? Yeah, or Terry? Yeah. Barbara, that's it.
Yes, thanks, Luke. So count me in as the first of the mic, and I hope everybody that comes to the mic says, count me in on that. My question is this. Yeah, I love that. Fellow Rotarians, as y'all know, I've spent many, many years in this particular area trying to address this particular issue, and the committee's done an incredible job in a very short period of time. Luke, my question is this: have you all had discussion, and as part of the plan, to also provide ongoing over several years wraparound support to the families or individuals that buy the homes? Because that is one of the top reasons that any types of programs for home ownership ultimately do not work long term, because everybody leaves the folks usually after the closing, or they'll say they're gonna stay with them a year. It really needs to be multi-year, and I can't see if Kevin Fields is here. I know he would be a phenomenal partner organization for multi-year ongoing wraparound services. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Excuse me. That's a great question, and we appreciate it. And thanks for making a commitment to participate also. Two things I did not mention that will be a part of this program. First of all, any qualifying buyer who executes a loan agreement as part of this program will go through a financial literacy course because this will impact a lot of folks who have never necessarily borrowed money or borrowed money at this level. And so we want to make sure that they understand what they're getting into. Now, we haven't worked all the details of that out yet, but that will be part of it. Anybody that gets a loan through PART from this program will be asked and expected to participate. We don't want any surprises. We don't want people to get in over their heads. Candidly, in our discussions with PART, we do, like any other situation, there will probably be a couple of foreclosures. I mean, that's just how it is. But we're going to do everything we can to eliminate that. Secondly, we're also wrapping into this a 3-year homeowner's warranty that will kick off when the loan is executed. So again, if they get in, they buy a home and all of a sudden the HVAC goes out of whack, they'll be covered. Or if an appliance has a problem, we don't want any other major expenses. Denise?
Also, I believe the Urban League, and they will also operate some of their programs to provide those kind of wraparound services. Our community is also very, very committed to that as well. So they are not a lender sign, here's money, send us money, payment, and we're done. They are very, very invested in making sure that their borrowers are successful. They'll also have other resources as needed.
Kim?
Thank you. So I think this is wonderful. I'll be number 2. And I would just, maybe enhancing and then asking my question that there are so many restrictions that do exist for large lenders. And so I don't think people really appreciate or understand that there really is an incapacity issue. There's not the ability for people to just walk into a financial institution based on restrictions that still exist today. So thank you for being creative, and thank you very much to PART for your support in getting this off the ground. My question is, how do I make my commitment?
Great question. I got here early today for one real reason, and that was to distribute a copy of our promotional flyer and the pledge form. And so you should have one at your place. And please feel
On the table?
Yeah, on the table. I should have brought one up here. Anyway, it's a 2-pager front and back that describes the program in a summary form. And then there is a 1-page pledge sheet. Feel free to fill those out and get them back to us. So you will be getting an electronic copy of all of this. In fact, you're probably going to hear from us more than once in the spirit of a good fundraising campaign. But what we wanted to do today was set the table for it. And if you are in a position today to make a pledge, we will take your form before we leave.
Thank you. We have David Constantino here with us just to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
If I could just dovetail off of that question that was earlier in terms of post funding and what happens. First of all, to say it's exciting to be to participate with this would be an understatement. Working with Denise and with Luke has been a true pleasure. I'm 7 months in as a Kentuckian, and a lot has happened in that time. This is one of the key highlights, but I want to mention in our loan program that we have specifically for this product, there isn't just a pre-home buyer educational piece to it, which is very traditional, but there's going to be a post. HUD certified counselors that will work with these first-time home buyers so that they provide ongoing education. That's part of the requirement of this program, as well as foreclosure prevention provided by HUD. All of these pieces will be put into place to best support a first-time home buyer experience as we go through, because we all know some of these homes are older. They're going to require attention and ongoing education. And so whatever investments anyone makes personally or through a corporate wide, we are also trying to protect the best we can on the other side of it. And that is supporting our home buyers all the way through.
My question is, the stage to start with, is I've had the opportunity to work with the Habitat for Humanity. I know times over the last 20 years, I guess. And it's always struck me that they learn from their experiences and how to keep people in their homes successfully. Biologically, that goodwill, we had one or two experiences working with it in the sense that one of our employees became one of their clients. Have we made sure we paid attention or tried to gain whatever knowledge Habitat for Humanity has for us in making this program long-term successful?
Well, it's a great question, and we haven't met specifically with the Habitat people, but obviously when we were doing a lot of our initial research, our committee was well aware of what Habitat has done very successfully in the community. And we differ from Habitat in one pretty significant way. Whereas Habitat is rehabbing or even building a brand new home, what we're doing is enabling people to qualify for a loan and actually buy the home and begin making payments. And the value there is to build credit, become, a good customer and have the opportunity to start building some wealth. So that's where our program differs. But certainly this is an ongoing learning experience. We'll probably make a couple more mistakes along the way, hopefully not, but if we do, we'll learn from it and move on.
A couple of Zoom questions. One was, will the pledge monies made by Rotarians be also considered as a Paul Harris contribution? And I think the answer to that is no, since we are donating to the Rotary Fund, which is local instead of the Rotary International Foundation.
That's correct.
The second question from Tracy Holiday was, will Park be discounting the mortgage rates or charging current rates?
So, yeah, and one of the comments that was made is on the underwriting criteria, and we certainly don't have time to go through every one of those. That is built out about 90% already. We have to go through one or two more processes to get everything approved. And I don't see any reason that any of that would change. But as far as the market rates and points or origination fees, the profile of what we anticipate for this particular product under normal circumstances would have a rate lift against market, probably 1% to 2% higher. There will be no rate lift. It will be discounted and offered the same across the board as any member for Park that were to obtain a mortgage loan. We do not raise a rate because of credit across the board. There's credit tiers, A, B, C, D, etc. These first-time home buyers will receive the exact same rate as an A+ credit FICO driven member as well. For the fees, they will be standard across the board as well, supported by Rotary Club. And in that, as it was mentioned, there'll be a 3-year warranty. We even had discussions on that, a 1-year warranty. What happens on year 2? What happens on year 3? Makes it very difficult. So these things have been thought out. Maybe there's still some areas, some pockets that need to be thought out further, but we think that we're trying to cross every T and dot every I to make sure that we are protecting these home buyers first and foremost would be the priority. So giving them market competitive pricing across the board is another priority.
You see why we needed a fiduciary partner?
I applaud the effort. I will participate. I have 2 questions. One is just the basic product. I understand, like Roland was asking about the Habitat model. That home is built new. You know that there are new systems, new mechanicals, a new roof. That certainly helps the process as far as maintenance and wraparound services that you have a product that you can count on for at least a period of time longer. I'm curious in this program, how is the product determined? Because the buyer comes forward, and wants to buy an existing home or needs to do renovations to a home, wants to build a new home. How do you determine what that is? So it is a product that this person can keep up would be one question. The other question is, I know that the need is great and you have to start somewhere or you don't get anywhere. On the other hand, if the output of this program is 63 new homeowners, but it's spread over 9 neighborhoods. I know there's big politics involved in anything, but will it have the same impact if it's not concentrated and to where you have neighbors and comps and security that start to be built within a neighborhood by concentrating efforts? So just curious how you thought, about those considerations.
Sure. So we also thought and received valuable input from both Luke and Denise on this as well. If you look at the average median household in these particular neighborhoods, we knew a couple of things. The restoration expense, it could be more than what the value of the home is being purchased, right? And so one of the things, if the average home, and I'm just doing an example, if the average home is $60,000, one of the things that this program will allow us to go over up to $125,000. It's not that that home will be at that'll be the asking price. That could be the finished repair, remodeling of that overall loan. To help assist with that, to make sure that as much of the restoration can have new appliances, new flooring, new roof, etc. Our loan to value on this particular product is going to be 125% loan to value. So we're very willing to go past the value of the home in order to ensure that the collateral is secure as much as the buyer. And so I think when we look at that across the board, we hope that the goal will be to close on a loan that's livable for many years and to educate the buyer to sustain that property for hopefully a lifetime of generational wealth.
Thank you so much.
Rotarians, this is transformative. This is going to change lives, and it's yours. So let's get behind it. Let's support it. And if you have any questions, I think Luke's going to be around a little bit after the meeting. Be sure on your table is a flyer with information as to how you can get involved. And I think we are going to be adjourned. Thank you. What? Oh, one more question.
Luke had asked me to speak today, and I just missed the timing on that. Steve Jester, pastor at Second Presbyterian Church, and I want to tell a quick story as to why I brought a check today. I still write checks.
All right.
And I'm excited about this, and here's why. I have a story about generational wealth in my own family. I come from a very middle-class, lower middle-class background in Dallas, Texas. My parents never had much money. My grandparents did, and they were able to give a house to my parents, and that they lived in for 40 years. Both of my parents died in 2021. I have a brother who lives in France. I've been there for 28 years. He and his wife have lived in an apartment in Paris all that time. It's not a sob story. It's a great thing, but they were in a 900 square foot apartment for 20 something years in Paris. They dreamt of getting out of Paris for a lot of reasons, and to have their own home. Because of my parents' death and their estate, we were able to get money to my brother and his wife to buy a house for the first time in their lives. He's 60 years old in September. And that kind of generational, that's not much wealth, but it has changed my family's history in a powerful way, and enabled us to go in a different direction, my brother and his wife. And so recognizing that that's not available to a lot of people, and also recognizing the difference that can make. To just speak to that and say, hey, we're not talking about saving the world, but we are talking about changing lives in ways that are very practical and very powerful. So I support it 100%.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you. All right, Rotarians, do good things and have fun doing them. We are adjourned.